All right. Hey, why don't we start off here? Why don't you go give someone a high five or a fist bump or something that's not in your family. No cheating here. Just give a quick high five. Let someone let someone know, hey, glad you're here. It's always fun. You can see the introverts and the extroverts, because I have to tell the extroverts, like, okay, you can stop talking now. Go back to your seat. But all right. No, seriously. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Here we go. So I'm excited to get to share today. Thank you for the ability to do this. And we got a banger today. This is going to be a good one. It's called 5 Excuses God Won't Accept. 5 excuses God won't accept. And I want to start off just by talking a little bit about excuses. I think as human beings, we are quite good at coming up with excuses. We had one of our sons at, I don't know when this was, a couple years ago, kind of get up out of bed. He's supposed to be in bed, going to bed. And we're like, what's going on? He's like, I'm trying to keep my eyes closed, but they just keep popping open. It's like, what am I going to do? I mean, they're just popping open. Or I came across some real life unusual explanations for car accidents that were reported for insurance, right? So we got, the other car collided with mine without warning me of its intention. Like, what was that car even thinking? I don't know. As I reached an intersection, a hedge sprang up, obscuring my vision. Like, it was just pop, pop. What am I going to even do, right? Yeah, I can't. It's just an excuse, right? I pulled away from the side of the road, glanced at my mother-in-law, and headed over the embankment. That was just, I mean, what was I going to do? And then finally, the telephone pole was approaching fast. I attempted to swerve out of the path when it struck my front end. I mean, it's just, around here, it's getting 2021, so dangerous. Telephone poles are just flying around left and right. But we are really good at coming up with excuses for just the issues we have. And a lot of times, thanks so much, a lot of times we're coming up with excuses because it really, maybe that's not the exact reason why we don't want to do something or something's happened. And so it's our excuse, right? It's how we try to get out of things. Well, I want to read from Exodus chapter 3, the story of the burning bush. You guys are probably almost all familiar with this. If you've ever seen the 10 Commandments or Prince of Egypt or any of these depictions of Moses' life, you're probably somewhat familiar with this story. And so we're just going to take a look at that and what Moses had to say. So this is in Exodus chapter 3. I think we've got some scriptures, but if you want to turn there, you are welcome. So Exodus 3, verse 1. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. And then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I'm concerned about their suffering. So I've come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, other people. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Now, I imagine this was pretty fun to hear, and right until that very last line, and now I'm sending you, right? When God says he's sending you, he's changing your plans. And, again, it can be pretty exciting to hear God's doing something. There's a new church starting. There's a new, some kind of new ministry, something going on, until he starts to require something of you, right? Or, hey, you're going to have the next 6 months when your pastors are on sabbatical. Okay, well, I think we can deal with this. And then, oh yeah, and I want you to be involved in some capacity, right? And then you start to go like, oh, okay, so now God is requiring something of me. I remember years ago, I started to feel God calling me to join a college ministry called Basic. And it was not something that was on my radar. I was initially very excited about. I won't go into the whole reason on how I felt God was leading me to do it, but I can say that once I said, this seems like something that I could see that, how I could try to make a difference in here, and God might be calling to this. I can say that one of the big hindrances, one of the big things that scared me when I started to feel that was this idea of raising my own support as a missionary. It was 100%, you had to raise your support, just like if you went off to another country. It was here, but you had to raise your funds as a missionary. And I totally understood that would mentally make sense. It makes sense that as a church body, we would raise some people up that could full-time spend their time in ministry things, whether it's a pastor or a staff person in a church, or a missionary, or someone in some other kind of ministry. But understanding the heart now, as an introvert, that I was going to have to figure out how to get through that and through some of that discomfort to do that. Once God said, I want you to do that, there was initially some excuses and things I found myself having to deal with. And Moses is like so many of us, plagued with doubt, plagued with insecurities, plagued with fear, maybe an overall sense of just inadequacy. And so he tries out some excuses on God. And I think his general approach, his thinking was that if I'm weak enough, then I'm not responsible to do what God has called me to do, right? If I don't have the goods, then maybe Todd is the wrong person for this. But I want to tell you, God doesn't dial the wrong number. When he puts a dream in your heart or a vision in the heart, he's not making a mistake. He's not in the business of making mistakes. He makes destinies. And he has a plan over each one of your lives. If you've got breath in your lungs today, God has plans for your life. I don't care if you're 10 years old or 100 years old. God still has plans in your life. And so let's take a look at some of the excuses Moses starts to pop off. How can I get out of this? Am I really the right person? And how God addresses each one. So the 5 excuses. So Exodus 3, verse 11. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you. And this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you've brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. So he says, hey, this is such an impossible feat. The way you're going to know it was me is when you're right back here worshiping me out of Egypt. And so this is really his first excuse, which is this, who am I? He was really saying, I'm not good enough. Who am I? I'm not good enough. And this was a confidence problem. I've got 5 C's for these different issues he's dealing with. So a confidence problem. Now, there were a lot of reasons why Moses may not have been the quote-unquote best person for this job. He had now been tamed by 40 years as just a shepherd. Okay? He's like in a whole different life from what he used to be when he was actually at one point kind of a prince in Egypt. Now he's just been a shepherd. He's gotten married. He had been out of touch with the people, right? So although he was an Israelite, he never had lived a normal Israelite life. He was adopted by the princess in Egypt. And so he was totally out of touch with what they were going through. He hadn't even been near them for 40 years. He had already failed at this once. One time he already tried to make a difference. He saw a Hebrew getting beat on by an Egyptian, and he basically tried to defend him. He ended up killing the Egyptian, and rather than him being some kind of hero, the Israelites basically turned on him. And number 4, he'd really already lost his desire. Like I said, this was a new thing. This is not on his radar. And so it's really easy for him to see that, there's probably other people who are better suited for this than me. He was washed up. Maybe God forgot. He wasn't living in the palace anymore. People didn't care what he said anymore. But God has a direct answer. He says, I will be with you. I am sending you. And then he goes on to say what the sign would be. And I think of some of the other heroes of the faith, where when they start to question, that's immediately what God wants them to understand. I think of Gideon, where it says, the Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor. He didn't feel like a mighty man. He felt like he was a nobody. The angel appears to him just, I think, thrashing wheat. But the Lord is with you. Or Jeremiah, do not be afraid of them, for I am with you to deliver you, declares the Lord. Or my hero David, who is fighting the Goliath, the giant. And he says, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. That's one of the things I loved about David, is he was walking into that with confidence. He knew the Lord was with him. And I feel like Romans 8 sums it up pretty good. If God is for us, who's against us? And some of us can, I think, easily feel like Moses in that situation, where you've got a whole inventory, a whole list you've been tallying up why we're not the right person for the job. Maybe you fell away from God for years and you're just starting back. And so even though you're maybe starting to get a dream or a way you can make a difference, you feel like you are inadequate for that role. Maybe you're headed to college soon, or into high school, and you don't know anyone there, and you're going to be the freshman, the low person on the totem pole. Maybe probably I imagine over the next year or so, over the next 12 months, there's some point in church we're going to have small groups again. I don't know when that will be, but at some point it's going to happen, and maybe you feel like, hey, we've got a setting, a home or something where we can do this, and you start to feel maybe God leading you to do that, but you don't have the experience, you don't have the training, you don't feel like you've got what it takes. I think of a story right before I met my wife, actually, where she decided she wanted to start a group. She was a resident director at SUNY Delhi, and she felt like she wanted to start some kind of Christian group on the campus. And she didn't have Bible school training. She didn't know if that might be a little weird because she was a girl and just, all that kind of stuff. And but she just felt like God was calling her to do that. So she hung up 100 flyers all around. She didn't think anyone was going to show up, but just figured she would take a first step and obey. And, she wasn't even the first person to try something like this. I think there have been others who had tried to start a Christian group on campus. They had failed, just hadn't worked out. Well, at the very first meeting, 4 students showed up. And they had their little crew, and the next week, some more came. And this group just started to take off, and she was able to help lead that group. I think by the end of one of the first or second semesters, she had taken a whole group to our conference we put on called the Basic Conference. She ended up baptizing 6 of those kids, water baptizing 6 of those kids right from that campus. And so I just think that's such a great thing, where once you realize God is with you in this situation, you don't have to worry about other people who have tried or failed or whatever. You just have to obey and do what God has called you to do. If we don't have that confidence, a lot of times we start to water down the dream. And, maybe God didn't really say that, or maybe it's not like this. But you can go into those situations with confidence. Let's keep going here. So Exodus chapter 3:13. So Moses said to God, well, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, well, what's his name? What shall I tell them? And God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you're saying to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. And God also said to Moses, say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name by which I am to be remembered from generation to generation. So I really see the second excuse as Moses is saying, I don't know what I'm supposed to say or do when I go into this situation. I don't know what to even call you. I don't know what's going. I don't have the information, and this is really a content problem. And the answer is that God gave Moses the plan. When Moses approached and said, I don't know what to do, God came through and gave the plan. And I'm not going to read the whole next passage, but basically God says that you're going to do signs and wonders, and it's going to turn the heart of Pharaoh. And as a matter of fact, the Egyptians are going to want you out of there so bad that the Israelite women are going to ask for stuff, and they're just going to give you gold and silver and clothes and say, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Just leave, right? And they're going to actually, it's not just they're escaping, they're plundering as they go. And, even if you don't feel like you have every detail worked out, I believe God will provide the plan. I remember years ago, again, when I was working at Basic, I'd heard about a group in South Carolina that had, how would I put it? They had, this wasn't really a thing until, I'd say, the last decade that I was familiar with in terms of church circles. But they started to basically have spontaneous water baptism. So rather than signing up and coming in a few weeks and, hey, I want to do this, there would basically be a message preaching what is water baptism and really looking at the model of the Ethiopian eunuch who said, well, here's water, why shouldn't I get baptized? And basically giving people an opportunity, hey, you want to follow Jesus? This is one of the next steps you can take. And I thought, man, that would be so awesome to do at this conference with college students where so many are making decisions that will impact their lives. And I felt like we need to find a way to do this. I can tell you it felt absolutely impossible at first. Our conference was held in, I believe at that time it was at the Hyatt. So, one of the biggest hotels in Rochester. And imagine some 27-year-old going, hey, I think it would be great for us to bring a tank with hundreds of gallons of water into your ballroom, and we're gonna, do our Christian thing, and we might spill some, but we're gonna do our best to clean it up, and it's gonna be great. What do you think? Right? And so we had to work through that with them. It just felt impossible. Then there was the logistics. How are we actually gonna get this tank into the space? And they had like a freight elevator. And we measured the distance, and I don't know what it was. Let's say it was 8 feet big, okay? Well, then we measured our water tank, and it was like 8 feet big, okay? And we had done so much work and finally got permission at that point, and I was like, well, I don't know how we're gonna do it, but let's just get it there, we're gonna make it happen. So we got to the elevator, and we're having to, it's not even our thing, we're borrowing it from a church, don't tell the church, but I'm basically like having to okay, maybe if we remove this one plank off it temporarily, and so we're like trying to jerry rig this thing in, and then we finally got it in with about a quarter inch to spare, right? And again, this thing that felt totally impossible, I felt like along every obstacle that we started to face, God would give us a plan or give us a way to get past it. And at that service, 47 students got water baptized and made that decision. I'm going to follow Jesus for the rest of my life. It was just an amazing experience. And even if you don't have every answer, I believe God's going to come through. Exodus chapter 4, let's keep going. So we're getting ready for our third excuse. So Moses answered, well, what if they don't believe me or listen to me and they say that the Lord didn't appear to you? Then the Lord said to him, what is that in your hand? And he goes, a staff. The Lord said, throw it on the ground. So Moses threw it on the ground and it became a snake, and he ran from it. Then the Lord said to him, reach out your hand and take it by the tail. So Moses reached out and took hold of the snake and it turned back into a staff in his hands. This, said the Lord, is so that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. And then the Lord gave him another kind of sign and wonder. He said, put your hand inside your cloak. So Moses put his hand in, and when he took it out, it was leprous like snow. Now put it back. And so he put it back in, and there was a rabbit. No, not really, but then it turned back normal, right? And so the Lord said, if they do not believe you or pay attention to the first miraculous sign, they may believe the second. But if they don't believe either of them, take some water from the Nile and pour it on the ground, and it'll become like blood. So God says, what's in your hand? And then throw it down. It becomes this sign and this wonder. We tend to have our previous experiences shape, I think, a lot of our belief systems. And as I referred to earlier, Moses had an incident years ago where he wasn't accepted. They didn't believe that he was from God. In Acts 7:23, it says, when Moses was 40, he decided to visit his fellow Israelites. He saw one of them being mistreated by an Egyptian, so he went to his defense and avenged him by killing the Egyptian. Moses thought that his own people would realize that God was using him to rescue them, but they did not. Right? So he already tried something. Why would they believe him now? Right? He had to leave everything behind and escape after that incident. And I think the big difference was Moses was acting out of the flesh before. He was acting out of retaliation, and now he's moving on to his calling. And God's answer for what if they don't believe me is what's in your hand. Most of us are never going to lead a nation out of slavery. But I believe, like I said before, God has a calling over each of us. And if you want to know what that is, I think a lot of times the first place you can look is what is in your hand. What is in your hand? Moses had a shepherd's staff. Didn't look like much, wasn't much. But God asked him to take what he had and throw it on the ground. And it turns into this miraculous wonder that's a sign for all of Egypt and Israel. When you throw down the little you have before the Lord, he's going to turn it into something miraculous. What is in your hand? What does he put in your hand that maybe he hasn't given to others when you look around? What are you good at? What's unique to you? What are you passionate about? I remember speaking at a church like this while I was working at Basic, and at the end, I think the church was getting ready to start a group on a college campus that students could meet at. And this older couple, I want to say maybe, late 60s or something like that, comes up to me, and they say, we really want to help. We'd love to help do something here, but I don't think we'd really be effective at leading this, and would it be okay, and the wife says, I love to cook. Would it be okay if I just made food, for it? And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, if you want college students to come, all you need to have is grandma's home cooking, and we'll have the whole dorm there. Yes. And they started doing that week after week after week. And that group, I want to say it became one of the largest groups in the whole network over a year. And they were that was what was in their hand. They threw that down, and God blessed that, and it really exploded, that group. I remember watching, not super recently, but maybe a year or two ago, there's a thing now where people play video games and then you watch them online. I don't know if you've heard about this, these video game streamers. This is I don't even understand it fully. There are certain things that I would never do, there's this game Minecraft where you build things with blocks. I could never watch someone playing a game like that. But sometimes there are certain games I am into and I want to learn how to get better at it. And so you can watch these professional video game players, essentially. Well, I started to watch one of these, and he did his little lesson or whatever it was. And right at the end of it, he goes, what did he say? He basically said, and hey, I like to share a little bit about what I've been reading lately. And he's still got video game, just kind of footage from when he's been playing some time. And he says, but let me just read you something I've read in the Bible. And he starts going through and basically sharing from his personal devotions to his thousands of followers and subscribers that like to watch him and the things he has to share. And I thought that was so cool. Here's the thing that's in his hands. God has given him an audience in this area. Here's this chance to throw that down and watch God do something and get to share his faith and just how God is still moving and in his heart through the Bible and things like that. I just thought that was that was so cool. I had another incident a while ago where, again, I was serving as a missionary, and I needed to buy a new computer. And so I'm looking on Craigslist for ads and stuff. I didn't have the money to buy a new one, but I found it looked like a great deal. So I head over to Lockport, New York, in the Walmart. And the guy gets in the car with me and, let me see the computer. And, oh, yeah, it's right here. Not exactly. But instead of pulling out a computer, he pulls out a gun, points it right at me. And I was like, he's like, okay, like this. And I was in a little better shape than right now. This morning, my wife patted my belly. I don't know what she was trying to signal, but I was in a little better shape. Anyways, to make a long story short, I felt like there was an opening as I was reaching. He kind of moved the gun off me, and I lunged at him and tried to take the gun away and kind of wrestled it away. And of course, I'm screaming for help, and other people start to come. And then I was able to, he was a little bit scrawny and probably a drug addict, to be honest, but I was able to kind of pin him down until the police came. And so I have this crazy experience, like, oh my goodness, I'm shaking for like hours afterwards. Well, the next day, I'm at work at Basic, and one of the gals who answered the phone at the time kept coming to me. There's all these news stations that want to understand what happened. The idea this was like a Craigslist thing, which was kind of big at the time. I think it just like struck a chord and became kind of a regional news event. And I realized, like, they want something from me. They want my story. They want to come talk to me. So how am I going to use this situation? And so I basically said, yeah, you can come down. I do want to say something at the very end, though, that you can't cut out of the interview, because I'm going to tell people that the reason I could do it is I knew what would happen if something went wrong and I died. I knew where I was headed, and I wanted to just talk about God for a minute. And so I got to do that. Again, here's this crazy opportunity to be able to find some way to how can I glorify God in this situation. And so what is it for you? Whether it's a crazy once in a lifetime situation, or it's just something that as you're looking in your life, you're saying, here's something in my hand. Maybe you're just a great friend, and you're going to be helping people when they're on the brink of just some of the worst situations in their lives. You're going to find a way to encourage them and bless them. Maybe maybe you're here as a mother, and you're saying, hey, here I have to spend so much of my time just mothering these kids right now. And you're just going to say, hey, this is what's in my hand right now. I'm going to throw this down. My goal isn't just to raise nice little boys and girls. I want to raise world changers for the kingdom of God, and to throw that down and see what God can do in their lives. Maybe you are a computer geek, and God's going to give you ideas and opportunities, and maybe even start your own businesses and things, and you're going to be able to fund churches and missionaries and all kinds of things. Maybe you're an oral hygienist, and every patient that comes in, you're going to spend 1 minute and just praying for that person as you're cleaning and doing what you need to do. Just praying over their life, that God would touch their lives, that God would be real to them and encounter them that week. Maybe you love to debate and you want to be a lawyer. I'm sorry, I don't think God can use you, but the rest of you, no, I'm just kidding, but the rest of you, God, whatever it is, God has that opportunity. God is going to use whatever you are throwing down and say, God, here's my life. Here's what I have to offer. I'm going to throw it down. Would you turn it into something miraculous? Turn next to the person and say, work with what you got. Work with what you got. Work with what you got. All right. We're down to our last two excuses here. Exodus 4, verse 10. Moses said to the Lord, O Lord, I've never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you've spoken to your servant. I'm slow of speech and tongue. And the Lord said to him, who gave man his mouth? Who makes him deaf or mute? Who gives him sight or makes him blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak, and will teach you what to say. So Moses is saying, I don't have what it takes. A capabilities problem, a resources problem. I don't have what it takes. You see, Moses was a doer, not a talker. And, he's not the guy that he can sell ice to the Eskimo, and he's just smooth and is going to make stuff happen when he gets in front of Pharaoh. He knows maybe, people think he has a stutter or some kind of, speech issue. Why would God choose him to persuade the most powerful man on earth to do anything? And God's answer is, I am the source of all capabilities and will provide what you need. You see, I think it's interesting. God did not deny what Moses was saying here. He didn't say, oh, your speech is not that bad. He didn't deny that there wasn't maybe an issue there. But it didn't matter if God was on his side. God will make provision for our incapabilities. Maybe you've heard, or maybe not, the story about the management consultant that had to talk to Jesus about the people he was going to hire. Let me just read you that letter. I'm not sure if you heard that one before. So this is from the Jordan Management Consultants. Dear sir, thank you for submitting the resumes of the 12 men you've picked for managerial positions in your new organization. All of them have now taken our battery of tests, and we've not only run the results through our computer, but also arranged personal interviews for each of them with our psychologist. It is the staff opinion that most of your nominees are lacking in background, education, and vocational aptitude for the type of enterprise you are undertaking. They do not have the team concept. We would recommend that you continue your search for persons of experience in managerial ability and proven capability. Simon Peter is emotionally unstable and given to fits of temper. Andrew has absolutely no qualities of leadership. The two brothers, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, place personal interest above company loyalty. Thomas demonstrates a questioning attitude that would tend to undermine morale. We feel that it's our duty to tell you that Matthew has been blacklisted by the Greater Jerusalem Better Business Bureau, and James, the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus definitely have radical leanings, and they both registered a high score on the manic depressive scale. One of the candidates, however, shows great potential. He's a man of ability and resourcefulness. He meets people well, has a keen business mind and contacts in high places. He's highly motivated, ambitious, and responsible. We recommend Judas Iscariot as your controller and right-hand man. Anyways, the disciples, they were not A-plus students. They were not the immediate people you would think of that Jesus would take, right? But when has God ever chosen someone based on their qualifications? I think of Jesus's lineage. Just take the women in Jesus's lineage. There's a handful that God has specifically called out for different reasons where we can see kind of what's going on. Just in those situations, those three situations, we have a woman who slept with her father-in-law while pretending to be a prostitute. We have an actual prostitute and a woman who was a foreigner and whose people served other gods. They probably were not, again, if you were hiring, someone for this job to be part of Jesus' lineage, they probably were not top choices. But God does not, like I said, he doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. If you don't have the resources immediately at your disposal, that is not going to be the game changer. You've maybe heard the saying, if it's God's will, it's God's bill. And sometimes that's used in weird situations. But I do believe that if God has called you to something, he's going to pay the bill. He's going to make it happen. And let's just get to our last one here. Exodus 4:13-17. But Moses said, "O Lord, please send someone else to do it." Okay, he's gone through 4 excuses up to this point. And then he just says, would you just send someone else? Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses. And he said, what about your brother Aaron the Levite? I know he can speak well. He's already on his way to meet you, and his heart will be glad when he sees you. You shall speak to him, put words in his mouth, and I'll help both of you speak and will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you, and it will be as if you were your mouth, as if you were God to him. But take this staff in your hand so you can perform miraculous signs. So ultimately, he gives this final excuse. He just said, would you just send someone else, please? And this was really a compliance problem, an obedience issue. And in this, when God responds to this excuse, this was the first time it says that God actually got kind of angry at this one. And I don't think it was because it was the fifth excuse that was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was because this one was essentially rejecting God. And the one thing God can't overcome is your willingness to obey. See, through all these different things, he's got all these excuses, and it's like God's answering him, and he's whittling Moses down to this last issue, which really is not an issue. It's a heart, or it's not a excuse. It's a heart issue, where he's saying, are you willing to obey? Will you obey? Am I your Lord in this situation? You know, growing up in the church and stuff, and I've seen different religions and just what they are doing, right? And I think about Mormons who give 2 years of almost everyone's life, right, to reach others with their religion. Obviously, the last few decades in our country have been shaped by radical Islamists and Muslims, right, who have given their lives when we think of some of the tragedies in our country and stuff, right? But, you know, I think of what all these other groups have been given. And I think of the times that and just what's happening. It's just, we're giving is excuses. We're not giving 2 years. I'm giving excuses out of fear, out of feeling I'm not good enough or whatever it is. And I want to close here. I want to tell you one more story about a guy named William Borden, or Bill Borden. In 1905, William Borden attended Yale. And even though he did his best to act like he was like everyone else as they went into that class, he was not like everyone else, because William Borden, Bill Borden, was extremely wealthy. He was a multi-millionaire. His family had made a huge amount of money from condensed milk. And Yale's tuition and living expenses, that would have been nothing for him. As a matter of fact, his parents had just given him, as a high school graduation gift, treated him to a trip literally around the world to experience some of the greatest things that life has to offer. So he just had the time of his life, from soaking in sulfur baths in Japan to touring the Taj Mahal in India, floating down the famous canals in Venice, climbing the pyramids of Egypt. I mean, if you could just have an amazing experience and do whatever you want, it sounds like he just had an amazing time. Well, during this trip, he begins to seriously think about his calling in life. And he read a book about the student volunteer movement, a movement of young adults mobilizing over 20,000 missionaries in the 1800s. And he basically starts to feel a calling to some of the hurting people groups of the world. And it said that at that time, on the back page of his Bible, he wrote down 2 words, because he had just written back as he's on this trip. He wrote back, and one of his friends that responded to him told him he was throwing himself away in terms of this dream of being a missionary to some of these remote people groups. And he wrote down these 2 words: no reserves. No reserves. Well, he comes into Yale again, and he starts this thing. He decides he's going to have a prayer meeting before breakfast, and so he gets his friend Charlie involved, and then soon some other friends, Farron and James, join. So there's the 4 of them that are praying, and they're praying for the college and for their friends to come to know Christ. As a matter of fact, they divide up the entire college and take about 300 students each, and say, hey, this is our 300. We're going to try to reach these people for Christ. And Bill said, give me the hardest ones. That was the kind of guy he was. So he continues to try to reach the campus. And what began as a simple exercise of prayer and Bible studies grows and grows and grows. And, from this time that they're freshmen until they end up as seniors. It says that in 1909, when they were seniors, 1,000 of Yale's 1,300 students attended a weekly prayer gathering. Just a complete revival on the campus because of starting with these 4 young men that were willing to do whatever it took and just pray and divide up and just try to reach their student or the other students for Christ. And as he's graduating, he's got all kinds of high-paying, nice job offers. and he decides, he turns them all down. And again, it's said that he wrote 2 more words down in his Bible at the back. He wrote down, no retreats. No retreats. I'm not going to get distracted by these cushy opportunities. I'm not going to back up from this vision, this dream that I believe I have. And so he writes down no retreats. So he continues at seminary at Princeton. And then he said, once he finishes, he gives up the cushy life that has been laid out for him. And he sets sail. He wants to reach a people group, a certain group of Chinese Muslims in, I think, northwestern China. But he needs to learn the language. And so he stops in Egypt, where is it here, to learn Arabic. And while he's there, tragedy strikes. And Bill Borden contracts spinal meningitis, this rare disease. And he fights for his life for a few weeks. And then he dies at the age of 25. Now, when the news of his death reached the United States, nearly every newspaper carries the story. And shortly after he dies, his Bible is given to his mother. And there are 2 more words that are written on that back page. No regrets. No reserves, no retreats, no regrets. Would you close your eyes with me? What are we going to do with the dreams, the visions, the plans that God is putting into our lives? Even as I was preparing this message, I thought of kind of an idea, a dream that I've just put on the back burner for a few years. Because of excuses, feeling, I don't know anything about that, or whatever it is. What, out of those excuses that Moses shared, is there anything that, as I'm talking, the Holy Spirit is signaling to you, that's something that you need to deal with? I'm not good enough? A confidence problem? I don't know what to even say or do? A content problem? They won't believe me or accept me? Which is really a courage problem. I don't have what it takes, a capabilities problem, or ultimately just send someone else, a compliance and obedience issue. Is there something now that you're feeling that Holy Spirit tugging and saying, no, you need to lay this down and take what's in your hand and throw it down and let God turn it into something miraculous? Lord, I just pray that we would have that same attitude as William Borden. No reserves, no retreats, no regrets. That we can lay it all down for you. That we don't need to come up with excuses, reasons why we're not the right person. Lord, you do not make mistakes. And I pray that even from the people in this room, you would do signs and wonders and things that would leave people shocked, leave people in awe. What? That happened through that person? What? Lord, just help us give you every area of our lives. Not just the easy parts, not just the things, every single area. And throw it down. And Lord, just do something miraculous with our lives. We commit to that this morning. Even if it ends up feeling like a waste, like people told Bill Borden, he was wasting his life. Lord, it is never a waste to give you our best. In Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen.